Struggles with generative AI, process improvement in supply chains, and AI trends in ERP software. Those are just a few of the topics we're going to cover here in episode 178 of Transformation Ground Control.
Welcome to Transformation Ground Control. Ground Control. The podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation. This podcast features technology agnostic and international discussions related to digital strategy, software selection, implementation, change management, business process optimization, and everything else you need to know to make your digital transformation project successful. Whether you're embarking on an ERP implementation, supply chain transformation, or any other business or digital transformation, this podcast is for you. Now, here's your host, Eric Kimberling.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, welcome to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 178. My name is Eric Kimberling, the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world reach the third stage of digital transformation success. And this is the weekly podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation, including the strategy, people, process, and technology aspects of transformation. Joining me, as always, is our co-host, Darian Chwialkowski. Darian, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I've got a great episode planned for you today. But before we jump in here, just a couple of things. First of all, you can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. This show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting and produced by Major Tom Productions. So thanks for being here today. We're going to cover a bunch of cool stuff today. We're going to start off with some social media questions. Then we're going to get into some couple newsworthy topics, including where's the ROI on artificial intelligence, and also discussion on generative AI struggles and organizations that are struggling to use generative AI. We'll talk through that here in the opening segment. And then later we'll have our first guest on the show, Casey Jenkins, who will be on to talk about process improvement in supply chain management. So we're going to talk about some of the trends and technologies and process improvement components of supply chain management. So be sure to stick around. She's a first-time guest and will promises to be a great guest on the show. And then later we're going to kind of go behind the scenes at a recent industry conference and play you a clip of some behind-the-scenes footage where I actually go talk to people at a conference, at a software conference, to talk about AI and some of the other trends that they're seeing in the industry right now. So we want to get sort of a crowdsourced input on that topic of emerging tech and AI in general. But before we get to all that, let's start with some of the social media questions. What do you have in store for us, Darian?
Yeah, some good social questions today. The first one is about a LinkedIn post. Eric, you said on LinkedIn that companies need to track the pulse of your change efforts for different companies out there. We got a comment and said, Eric, can you please elaborate on this? How do you measure that? How do you do it? Where do you do it? And what does the information tell you when you track the pulse of your change efforts?
Yeah, well, it's important to track the pulse to see kind of how you're trending and to see how you're tracking against your goals. So if you're trying to do something major in your project, like transform the culture of the organization or change the way you operate or change the communication style, or you're trying to work on your leadership style as a leadership team, all those things take effort, it takes time, and you're not going to know how things are coming along unless you track it and measure it. And change management, this is especially important because change management in general is just such a nebulous, fuzzy term, and it's a fuzzy activity. It's not like software or technology where you can see and touch and feel and know exactly whether or not the software is working. It's pretty obvious. It's easy to measure. Change management's a little bit more difficult because you can't see it, touch it, or feel it like you can the technology. So it's really important to put tools in place to measure it and track how you're coming along. The other reason why you want to track too is because as you go through a change effort, you're trying to move the needle on certain dimensions of your culture or what it is you're trying to change organizationally. But then inevitably what happens is other things start to percolate, or other things start to emerge as potential change management challenges or problems because you're going through a change and because it's affecting the organization, because there's always going to be some blowback on some of the changes you're making. And by tracking that along the way, you start to pick up and anticipate and detect early where some of those challenges are and where some of the pitfalls are going to be for your change effort. So that's why you want to track it. And that's what the output should be telling you is how are you moving along and where are the new risks? How are those new risks emerging within your change efforts?
Yeah. So that's how or why you want to track it, but how do you actually track it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's two ways. One is quantitatively, we'll do surveys of employees within organizations, and these are anonymous surveys. They're meant to be about 10-minute pulse surveys to where you can capture information based on people's perceptions and their opinions about the organization. So that's a quantitative way to capture or translate something that's very subjective into something that's more quantitative and objective. Um, the other way that we do it is a little bit more qualitative, but you can always convert it into quantitative analysis, and that is by doing focus groups with subsets or sample populations of different parts of your organization. So if you have multiple, divisions that are in different parts of the world or different business units, you'd want to have representatives from each of those so you can start to pulse or track the pulse and understand and measure how things are tracking differently potentially at these different locations. Even within a single location organization, you can look within different departments to understand how are different departments reacting differently to these changes. And those qualitative focus groups can help you unpack and discover some of those trends to augment the quantitative data that we get from the online surveys that we do as well.
Okay, so the next question we have is, instead of placing all the blame on SI, focus on understanding the client's expectation and ensure they're actively involved in the process. This collaborative approach can help better drive results and foster a more productive relationship between all parties involved. What is your take on this?
I totally agree. I mean, the system integrator is easy to blame when things go wrong because you think, well, I hired a system integrator or an implementation partner to come in to implement something that they're experts at. I'm not. And it can be easy to fall into this trap of sort of learned helplessness of, hey, I'm not the expert, but you, Darian, you're the system integrator, you're the expert, you are, so I'm just going to let you handle it. And you can't be successful. You really can't. I mean, there's not a way for you to be successful in that model. You have to say, well, Darian's got some strengths. She knows how to implement technology. I know my business and I know the politics in the organization. We have to put our heads together now and be sort of equal peers on this project to make it successful. And so you can't outsource and depend too much on your SI. Now, of course, if your SI doesn't bring the right resources to the table, or if they're not managing the project well, or they're doing something that they should be doing that they're not, then of course you can blame your SI. I mean, I'm not saying don't ever blame your SI, but what you don't want to do is say, well, I'm going to take a hands-off approach and just sort of wipe my hands clean, pass it off to Darian because she's the SI, and then things are inevitably going to go wrong because I'm not engaged, I'm not involved, my team's not supporting the project the way they should, and it's going to be really easy for me just to turn around and blame Darian for that. So, you have to recognize that it is a equal footing sort of a relationship. I mean, ultimately, I would say the client should be a step up, and you're managing the system integrator rather than just assuming the system integrator is going to manage you. Just like if you're going to build a house, I'm not a home building expert, but if I was going to build a house, I would make sure I was actively involved in reviewing architecture and signing off on different things, even though I'm not an expert building houses. I know what I want. And I know if I see something that's not what I want, I know, if I'm involved, I can course correct faster. So it's the same sort of mentality you want to take as if you were building a house or having a house built custom for you. You would probably take an active role rather than just saying, I'm just going to let the architect and the builders go build whatever it is they want to build, and I'll move in as soon as they're done without being involved. You can't go to that extreme. You've got to have that collaboration. So it's the same thing with technology and system integrators and all that good stuff. You've got to have a solid collaboration between the two.
Definitely. You want to be the one picking out the flooring and the tile going in your bathroom, I would assume, Eric.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And you can imagine how good I would be at that if I were ever allowed in my household to make those decisions, but I'm not. But it's a good example though. I mean, you're not, I assume you're not an expert in flooring or tiling, but you probably know what you like and you know how to pick out the flooring and tiling that you like. So it doesn't mean you can't you can just let your builder choose all that stuff for you. You'd want to decide that. And it's the same with your implementation too. You've got to live with this and live in this technology and this transformation long-term. Your system integrator doesn't. So you've got to be involved.
Yeah, absolutely. That totally makes sense. That's all of our social questions for the day. Thank you guys for the social questions. Any questions you guys have for us, make sure you're commenting them on our social media, Eric's social media, then we can be sure to answer them in any of our podcasts that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. Love getting the audience question and the user generated content that it creates to here. So thanks for those questions. And we'll get to more next week as well. In the meantime, though, we're going to get into some newsworthy articles that you've discovered here recently, Darian. We're going to talk about the ROI of AI and whether or not it exists. And then we're also going to get into some of the struggles with generative AI and some of the struggles that organizations are having adapting to or adopting that technology. And then later in the show, after we get through those two noteworthy topics, we'll get to process improvement in supply chains. We're going to have a guest on the show. Her name is Casey Jenkins. She's the CEO of a company called 828 Consulting that does supply chain consulting. And she's going to be on talking about process improvements, technologies, other trends in the space. So that'll be a great conversation. And then later, after Casey's on, we'll talk about AI trends and ERP software as well, sort of behind the scenes at a tech conference. So stick around for that. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control. Hi, this is Eric Kimberling with Third Stage Consulting, and I want to invite you to join our annual tech agnostic conference called Digital Stratosphere. Digital Stratosphere is a conference that features some of the industry's brightest minds, greatest thinkers, and it's a great opportunity to network with peers, other industry people, other CIOs, other project team members that are going through digital transformations or ERP implementations. We've got a great lineup of speakers this year. It's a 3-day event, a lot of great entertainment, networking opportunities. I'll be there as one of the keynote speakers, along with some of my favorite speakers in the industry as well, both within Third Stage Consulting, but also outside the company as well. So I encourage you to check it out and learn more. You can go to stratosphere2024.com to learn more about the event. You can see the agenda, the way it's shaping up, and you can see some of the past testimonials of people that have attended. And the event is October 2nd through the 4th, 2024. It's going to be based in Denver, Colorado, downtown Denver, beautiful downtown Denver in the fall, which is a great time to visit Denver if you haven't been. Again, stratosphere2024.com. Check out the agenda. Check out our early bird pricing for passes. And the other beautiful things, if you can't be here in person in Denver, which we hope you can, but if you can't, you can also join remotely as well. We have virtual passes available as well, so you're able to join from wherever in the world you might want to join from. So stratosphere2024.com, check it out, and I hope to see you there.
Interested in working for a company that truly values your unique skills and experience? Here at Third Stage, we don't hire based on resumes alone. We look at the full candidate, experience, and willingness to provide excellent service for our clients. Within a technology, independent, and agnostic consulting firm, you have the opportunity to learn across industries with a diverse group of clients. Our consultants also have the opportunity to diversify their portfolio and learn across technology systems. If you're interested in joining a high-growth entrepreneurial organization, please reach out to us at work@thirdstage-consulting.com.
I'm gonna leave it all out there and I'm gonna leave it all out there.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 178. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Darian Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com, and you can also learn about past episodes, or you can watch or listen to past episodes of the show by going to that same website called transformationgroundcontrol.com. And the show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, an independent consulting firm that helps clients with digital transformations, as well as produced by Major Tom Productions. So you've got a couple interesting articles and newsworthy topics for us to talk about here today, Darian.
Yeah, so the first one is a report by EY and HFS Research found that 93% of supply chain executives struggled to implement generative AI, with only 7% successfully integrating it into their operations. Although 90% of the respondents used traditional AI, the advanced capabilities of Gen AI, such as designing new processes and forecasting demand, present challenges. Only 28% achieved a low human touch supply chain, and 50% gained end-to-end visibility. With these different statistics and findings from this article, Eric, why do you think that 93% of supply chain executives struggle with implementing Gen AI despite its potential benefits?
Well, I think if I had to speculate, I would say that it's probably because two things. One is that it's such a new technology, relatively speaking, that a lot of people starting at the leadership level all the way down the organization don't understand or don't have a clear vision of how they could be using generative AI. So you look at all the potential use cases of AI within your organization. There's probably hundreds, maybe even thousands of ways you could be using AI within your organization. If you try to tackle all that at once, you're going to get overwhelmed and you're probably going to spin your wheels and go nowhere, because it's just not because the opportunity is not there and there's not potential benefit, but because it's just too overwhelming. And so one thing that I think would be helpful is, we see this a lot with small and mid-sized companies where they're trying to scale up for growth. And the way they scale up for growth is they create a clear, repeatable set of business processes, that they can hire people and plug them into and have a clear, consistent way of operating as a company. So you have to sort of take that startup scale up mentality as it relates to AI, even if you're a really large, especially if you're a really large organization. You've got to be saying, okay, we're going to be real deliberate and targeted in terms of where we want to use AI. We're going to sit down as a small team, let's just say a SWAT team, and figure out how we could be using generative AI. Let's figure out some use cases. Let's test it out. Let's try it. Let's create an MVP and let other users try it out and get their feedback as well. And then you start to get some traction. You start to see some things that work, and you start to get some momentum. And then you take that pilot or that beta version of however you're using generative AI, and then you scale it across the organization from there. But I think if you skip that first step I talked about, and then you just go try to roll out at scale generative AI, because it's so cool and can do so many great things, I think it's just going to get lost in the mix and people are going to get confused. And so I would suspect that's the number one reason, if I had to speculate, is because organizations aren't taking the time to clearly articulate how they're going to use AI and pilot it out and test it and then scale it, partially because it's such a new technology, which leads to the second reason why it's probably not getting traction, or as much traction as you might think yet, is because so many software vendors are still trying to bake AI into their products. And that's a moving target that continues to change every week, every month. And we see it all the time with ERP software vendors. Every time we get a product briefing or go to a conference, there's something new and different. That's always the case in technology. It's always changing quickly. But with AI, it's moving at a breakneck speed. And so you're sort of chasing this moving target. If you're a company trying to use AI, you're chasing a moving target. And so you've got to sort of pick off the pieces of that moving target and say, okay, I don't care where the target goes in the short term. For now, I'm just going to pick off these couple little areas and then, test out some ways that we could get some high value out of AI. So I'd say bite-sized chunks, being deliberate, clearly articulating how you're going to use AI. That's probably some ways to overcome that what's that called? Not inertia, but those headwinds that organizations are facing with Gen AI right now.
Right. That makes sense. How important would the end-to-end visibility in supply chains for effective deployment of Gen AI be for specifically to supply chains?
Long term, I think it's really important. And that's something I want to come back to with our guest, when she's on. I want to talk a bit more about end-to-end processes in supply chain management. So stick around for that discussion. But in the meantime, I'd say, on one hand, I'd say, normally I'd say end-to-end processes are key. You've got to understand how things operate across an entire enterprise. With AI, though, and some of the things I just mentioned, where it's so overwhelming, it's a moving target, there's so many ways you could be using AI. I think it sounds weird to say it out loud, and part of me can't believe I'm going to say it, but I'll say it anyways. I think you have to go counterintuitive here and say, well, we're not going to look end to end. We're just going to look at one specific problem area within a specific silo or specific process where we could be using Gen AI. And the reason I say that is because you need to get a kind of a foothold with the technology. You've got to find these areas where you can start using it now and use it effectively. And then you start to scale it up, you get momentum, and then you can start looking more at end-to-end processes and optimizing and all that stuff. But it's almost like you want to take more of an agile, minimum viable product approach with AI, where you just pick out some areas of your business where you can start deploying it now and testing it out without necessarily having to worry about end-to-end processes as a precursor or prerequisite to adopting some AI.
That makes sense. I'm excited to kind of dive further into this with Casey later. I think she'll have a lot of good insight on the supply chain side with AI. But Our next article today talks about where is the ROI for AI? CIOs struggle to find it. This is from CIO.com, and they discuss the challenges CIOs face when demonstrating the return on investment for AI projects. Despite the potential of AI, nearly half of the AI leaders find it difficult to estimate or prove its value. The issue is heightened by high costs of AI complexities and its implementations, leading many organizations to question the tangible benefits. The article emphasizes the need for clearer metrics and better alignment with businesses' objectives to justify AI investments. Eric, how do you think organizations can manage high costs and complexities associated with AI implementations to ensure they're getting value for their investments they're making?
Well, I'd say first and foremost, you want to make sure that the value that you're getting potentially out of AI justifies the cost and complexity that you're talking about. So in other words, you don't want to fall into that trap of saying, well, I need to deploy AI because everyone else is, even though it's expensive and complex and I don't know how I'm going to get value out of it. That's probably not a good reason to go down the path of AIs. But if you can sort of cherry pick those areas that are going to create the most value and justify the cost and complexity of AI in those cases, then that's where you start. And then, from there, then you can optimize and figure out how you can be better using it. Then it'll probably teach you on how you could be using AI even better across other parts of the organization. So that's where I'd start in terms of trying to make sure you could justify it before you just jump in and start deploying stuff, which is true for any technology, by the way. It's not just an AI thing. That's true for old school ERP systems or, any sort of technology you might be deploying.
Yeah. So they talked about not having specific metrics that companies are measuring for AI. Do you have any ideas of what these specific metrics could be used to measure the ROI on these projects?
Yeah, I think, there's certainly the labor efficiency. I mean, if you can look at, my team of, let's just say you've got, I'll just pick out a number here. You've got 10 people that their job is to optimize, their job is to optimize transportation or logistics routes. They're planning out the transportation routes that are taken to optimize the supply chain. There's a limitation on what those 10 people can do. They're relying on likely fragmented data and tribal knowledge and siloed systems to try and piece it all together and figure out how to optimize transportation and logistics in this example. But if you take AI and AI can take some of that heavy lifting and take some of that load off, now all of a sudden you can keep growing as a company and maybe those 10 people can handle your size of organization as you scale and grow further. So that's one metric you want to look at is how can it create labor efficiency gains, even if I'm not going to cut heads or reduce headcount as a result of AI. Perhaps I don't need to hire as many people in the future as a result of AI. And then the other thing that's arguably even higher value, but maybe harder to measure in the short term, is going to be the effectiveness that AI brings to the table. And I think that's the real game changer is, set aside those 10 people and what they're doing and whether or not they become more efficient. Let's assume they do become slightly more efficient as a result of AI. The real benefit might be that they're actually just doing a better job. Now, those 10 people you're investing in are able to actually have a better output and a better deliverable to the organization because you've got AI supporting them and taking some of the load off and helping them think about challenges and data in ways that they hadn't been able to, that no one human can. So that's where I think the real value is. It's a little bit harder to quantify that value, but there are ways you can do that to say, if we could set a target that says we're going to optimize let's just say we're going to optimize our inventory levels by reducing our inventory level by 5%, what would that impact be to our bottom line? And does that justify an investment in AI? If it does, then we say, okay, then our target's 5%. We need to find a way to use AI to reduce our inventory levels by 5% in that, real basic example. So that's the way I would approach it for sure, is setting those targets and, that holds the team and the organization accountable to it longer term.
Yeah, I think AI has a lot of good and exciting uses to it, but I think each company specifically needs to find their own metrics and their way to measure it, because every company will be a bit different from the next.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'm excited to hear more about the AI and other supply chain things from our guest today, Casey. So I'll let you kind of get into that interview, Eric.
Yeah, this will be a great, she's a first-time guest. I came across her on LinkedIn. We've been connected, and I started following her there a while ago, and just really like some of the content she was putting out. She's a very high energy. She's going to bring up the energy level here, which is great because I'm not always high energy, especially in the morning. So it's going to be great to have her sort of inject some. You won't be the only one here with high energy, Darian. You'll finally have a counterpart that can bring some energy here. But she's going to be on the show to talk about process improvement in supply chains. I've got a bunch of questions I'm going to start off with in addition to audience questions, but we're going to get into technology, process improvement, just general trends in supply chain management, and get her take on that as someone who's been in the supply chain space for 10 years now. So we'll bring her on the show here in just a moment. We'll chat with her. And then later in the show, after Casey is on, we'll talk about behind the scenes at a tech conference. We'll show you behind the scenes and some of my discussions with people at that conference to find out some of the trends in the market, as well as AI, AI in particular, and how they're using AI in their organization. So stick around for that. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control.
fun is an art that's hard to teach. Another clever word sets off an unsuspecting herd, and as you step back into line, a mob jumps.
If you are involved in any sort of digital transformation or business change initiative, you will want to download the Digital Transformation Report. With its comprehensive overview of business and technology trends and best practices, this report is a must-have guide for any transformation project or executive team. Download this free report by visiting Third Stage Consulting at thirdstage-consulting.com. You can also visit our website to learn more about us or download independent reports, videos, and other best practices. Again, visit thirdstage-consulting.com today to learn how you can take your transformation to the third stage of success.
Are you looking for ways to promote your product or service to enterprise technology decision makers and influencers throughout the world, like the ones who listen to this podcast? Major Tom Productions creates media, events, and influencer marketing for B2B technology providers. Our productions are exciting, educational, disruptive, and effective. Most importantly, they create results. Our content is unlike any other in this industry, engaging, influential, and trusted by technology buyers and influencers throughout the world. Each month, our productions reach hundreds of thousands of targeted buyers and decision makers who trust and engage with our honest and tech-agnostic content. With long-tail viral results and engagement with our content, Major Tom Productions provides a way to reach your target market and create awareness, calls to action, and a connection with potential customers. So, collaborate with us today. Learn how we can feature your product or service on podcasts such as Transformation Ground Control, Journey to S/4HANA, and Journey to Dynamics 365. We can also feature your brand on our YouTube channel called Digital Transformation with Eric Kimberling, which boasts over 100,000 subscribers and over 2 million video views per year. You can also participate in our in-person events, including our Digital Stratosphere Conference. Contact us today to learn more. We can tailor a marketing campaign that works for you. We look forward to helping more people learn more about and become engaged with your brand.
With 1,000 lies in a good disguise, hit 'em right between the eyes, hit 'em right between the eyes. When you walk away.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 178. My name is Eric Kimberling here at Darian Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of the show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. And you can also listen to all the past episodes or watch all the past episodes by going to that same website, transformationgroundcontrol.com. The show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting and produced by Major Tom Productions. So thanks for being here today. I'm excited for another first-time guest on the show, Casey Jenkins, who is the CEO and owner of a company called 828 Consulting. She's going to be on the show here talking about process improvement within supply chain management. I wanted to have her on the show, not only because she is a very energetic person as a way of simplifying some complex topics, but also because she has a really unique background, not just in supply chain management, but also in technology and process improvement and Lean Six Sigma and some of these other tools that she's got experience with. So with that all being said, Casey, thanks for being on the show today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I am coming from Savannah, Georgia, and I'm always interested in hearing where everyone is listening from. I think it's always so intriguing to see what type of presence you're getting to reach with these types of platforms. So
Yeah,
excited to see where everyone's tuning in from.
yeah, definitely. And what's cool about what you're here to talk about is this is such a global topic. I mean, this is something that doesn't matter where in the world you are.
Yes.
This is something that's going to be very relevant to you. So excited to dive into it. We were talking before we went live here today that it's been a while since we've covered this topic on this podcast and in these live sessions. So I'm really excited to have you here to chat about that. But before I just dive in and start asking you a bunch of questions and the audience starts barraging you with questions, maybe tell us about you and your company, your background, and all that good stuff.
Yes. So yes, like you said, I'm Casey Jenkins. I'm the owner and CEO of 828 Consulting, and I focus on process improvement, specifically within supply chain processes, but it can be any business process. I work with companies up to about 30 mil in rev, anyone who produces a product. So CPG, manufacturing, retail, food and beverage. If you produce a product, you probably have a process and it probably needs improved. And I also work with some tech companies developing solutions within the supply chain space, and kind of guiding them on how to make sure that their solution is appealing to different processes that are within an organization, and what features are needed and things like that. I've been in the industry for 10 years, diverse background. I've done everything from brokerage within transportation all the way up to international supply chain management. Took a little left turn into tech, and worked with some tech companies. And then now doing my own thing, and it's been quite the journey. I know one of the questions was about my degrees. I've got master's degree in supply chain management, master's degree in project management, black belt in Lean Six Sigma. So I definitely come at the industry with a very educational perspective, but then how to apply it more practically as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So what, that's an interesting story to get to where you are today. I guess before I dive into some other questions about your background, tell us about 828 Consulting and what you guys do, what you specialize in.
Yeah, so process improvement. So like I said, I can work with any business process, but primarily I like to more stay within like the transportation realm, the distribution realm. I feel like there's a lot of improvements within that area of supply chain. I get requests though for, even procurement, manufacturing, just how to make these different sequential steps be streamlined. So I've worked with returns processes. I've worked with even sales cycles, and how to make sure that those are integrated with your operation so companies are prepared to execute on what they're selling. But mainly trying to, just like everyone else is trying to do, increase efficiency, reduce your costs, and add value into your supply chain, and make sure that your customers are getting what they expect and what they want to be getting.
Yeah. It's funny you talk about the returns process, because when I was way early in my career at one of the big 5 consulting firms, my first process improvement project was a returns process re-engineering. And I thought, returns process, how hard can that be? And it turns out it can be very complex. And
oh my gosh, yeah. Well, and it's often a forgotten piece, right?
Yeah.
I don't think companies really pay attention to that side very often, and the one company that I had worked with where I streamlined the return process, it's like, oh, we'll take that back. We'll figure it out later. And then it never gets, you'll circle back around on it. And so then it's like, well, what are we doing with all this stuff sitting in our warehouse? And we didn't do this, we didn't do that. So I think it's a forgotten piece of supply chain sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of little nooks and crannies and forgotten pieces of supply chains as we'll talk about.
Yes.
Before I get to my next question, I want to say hello to Amy from Houston, Texas, Dev from India. Thanks for being here today. As Casey mentioned, she's from Savannah, Georgia. I'm from Denver, Colorado. Love to hear where the rest of the audience is from here today. Usually in these summer months, the audience starts off a little quiet, so I'm trying to get the audience talking here. I think people are in summertime mode for much of the northern hemisphere here. But love to hear where you're from today. But tell us a bit about how did you end up in supply chain and process improvement? Like, how did you plan on doing this all along? Was it sort of some grand master plan you had as a kid, or did you stumble into it? How did you end up here?
That is a great story, to be honest. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a meteorologist. So I wanted to be the next, Jim Cantori. Like, that was my dream. I loved weather. I loved, storm chasing. I am a storm spotter with NOAA. It's now a hobby. But I used to love like watching the radar, forecasting, all of it. And I do actually have 2 degrees in weather. But I got out of undergrad and got into the workforce and got into transportation. And I started to go, well, wait a second, this is kind of cool. I had never up until that point paid attention to, looked at how are products actually moving. And I really enjoyed the transportation side of things and got finished with my weather degree. And I was like, well, what's next? Like, do I just completely forego this experience that I have within, transportation supply chain, or and go the route of weather? Or do I maybe get some more education in this field that I already have some experience in? And I chose supply chain. So I like to say that I got into it by accident and I stayed into it by choice. And I feel like it's a lot of people, that's how they've gotten into the industry. You're either chose to do it because family or someone is in it, or you accidentally got into it and you stayed in it. But I really enjoy the challenge. And I think that's one thing that's fun about the industry is that it's always changing and it's always challenging. But then I realized very quickly, because everyone always asks me, well, how are weather and supply chain related at all? They're both processes, right? When you really stop to think about it, they are both processes. So like within weather, you have something that'll happen in the atmosphere that triggers an output, right? Same thing within supply chain, same thing within business. One small change in a weather process can produce a different output. Well, you've got the same thing in supply chain and business as well. So I just quickly realized that both are processes. I just like how things work. I just like an order to things. I like being able to find out how to get to an output easier, faster, more efficiently. And so that's how I got into it and stayed into it. And I would say it suits me. It suits me pretty well.
Like, I couldn't help but think about, as you're talking about transportation and weather and meteorology, like, and you were talking earlier about the tech companies you've worked with, and thinking about AI, and like it made me start to think, I wonder if there's a way to marry, weather patterns and predictions with transportation, logistics, supply chain, and how it affects it and how you should route things differently potentially. I mean, might be a way for you to work back into meteorology and use some of that data to help in an AI sort of a way potentially.
Yeah, well, there are some companies out there who actually do that because it's a part of like a risk management strategy, right? I mean, we all know that certain areas of the country end up facing, adverse weather. Let's look at the Southeast during hurricane season, or the Midwest during, storm season, the snow in the Rockies and, I guess more Pacific Northwest. But, it's one of those things where companies do have to shift around because of the weather. So there is actually a little more direct of a tie than just the process side of it, in that, weather does impact, risks and potential risks, whether that's just having to reroute, flooding or risk to the business itself or the assets themselves, things like that. So yeah, there are some companies out there who do that though. It is a part of risk management for sure.
Yeah. So you were talking about your education. It's a little intimidating because you're very well educated. I thought I was pretty well educated, but I do not have this academic pedigree that you have. But you've got dual master's degrees in supply chain management, project management, and then a black belt in Lean Six Sigma. I only have one master's degree and I'm a green belt in Six Sigma. So you've totally outdone me and maybe a lot of the people listening here today. But tell us how you ended up doing. How'd you pursue this academic side of things?
Yes. Well, another thing I'll add is I did just start my doctorate in business administration as well, focusing on supply chain logistics. So one thing is I truly just love learning. That's a big thing for me, is I love understanding from a theoretical and conceptual standpoint how things work. But when I started to go into supply chain, I felt like I needed that framework. I needed that understanding. I needed that baseline conceptual, I guess, perspective of how this all works. That's just how I learn. That's just how I am. I need to know the why behind things to make sure that I know how to effectively execute those things. And when I finished up my supply chain master's, it was actually right as COVID was happening. And I started to see how companies were going to be executing a lot of projects within supply chain specifically on how to optimize, how to combat some of the challenges that COVID actually brought, or highlighted some areas of improvement that we all needed as organizations. And so I said, well, hey, I should go get some education and framework around how project management works and then marry the two together. And I quickly learned, though, that project management and supply chain management are very, very interconnected disciplines. And the mindsets needed for both are very, very similar. Some of the tools that are used can be used cross-disciplinary. Some of the frameworks can be used on both sides, but it's also important as a project manager executing some of these initiatives within supply chain, understanding how that project is feeding into the operational side of the business. I think from a strictly project management perspective, and I can say this knowing both disciplines, it's, you're just executing the tasks to get to the output, but understanding how that output feeds into the overall operations of the business, or how different tasks or delays in a project can impact the overall operations of a business. I think that's important from the project management perspective. The lean side of things, I've heard a lot of talks around if lean is actually still a valuable methodology. And especially because most people said, well, JIT failed, right, within COVID. It doesn't give leniency to be able to adapt or adjust. But for me, I see it from more of the value and waste components, and how, the customer-centric perspective that lean takes. And so I wanted to make sure I had that framework as just a tool in the tool belt, to make sure that I'm approaching things, even if it's not from a wholly lean perspective, but at least applying a few things here and there in relation to value and waste. So that's how those three things are interconnected, at least from my perspective, and I found it valuable. But you'll learn quick that a lot of these methodologies and tools, they're all seeking to do the same thing. So
yeah, exactly. You just have to pick which ones apply at what time. Yeah. I'm here with Casey Jenkins from 828 Consulting, talking about process improvement in supply chains. I've got a lot more to cover, but first we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
I'm excited to share our newly released 2024 Digital Enterprise Operations Report. This free download is available on the Third Stage website at thirdstage-consulting.com. This report is truly packed full of technology-independent and agnostic insights for your project to ensure that you're strategically optimized for success. Download your copy today with the QR code in front of me, or visit our website for more details.
The last thing you want to have happen is for your digital transformation to end up in court. I've been doing this for 20 years and I have seen everything. My name is Marcus Harris. I'm a software and technology attorney, focusing my practice on drafting and negotiating software-related contracts and litigating software disputes across the country. Feel free to reach out to us at taftlaw.com. We'd love to talk to you about the litigation process and what you can expect.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 178. This is Eric Kimberling. I'm here with Darian Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday at transformationgroundcontrol.com. The show is produced by Major Tom Productions and sponsored by Third Stage Consulting. So thank you for being here today. I'm in the middle of a conversation here. I've got Casey Jenkins on the show. We're talking about process improvement in supply chain management. In these 10 years plus you've been in the supply chain industry, what are some of the biggest trends or changes you've seen over the last decade?
Oh my gosh. I would say the first one being the business landscape. And it's funny because I don't really feel like that was changing as quickly prior to the pandemic. And I feel like the pandemic really just shifted that landscape overnight. And I say that because I know, like, in my programs, even before and in my work before the pandemic hit, the way things were working was just so different. And case studies that I was doing, or, research that I was doing prior to that point, was looking at some of the ways we're doing things now, right? And it was saying, oh, this is 10, 15 years off. We're not expecting the industry to evolve this quickly. So, like, I think the idea was there that the landscape would eventually get to where we're at now. But I think the pandemic really accelerated it. And I would say that comes from, the landscape itself being, I guess, the customer demands, how fast can we get products into customers' hands, what their expectations are in terms of quality, sourcing, sustainability, what's their experience going to be like. And I feel like that's all really shifted. Before, with brick and mortar, you walked into the store. Now, how fast can I get my stuff delivered online? How fast can this be at my doorstep? And I say that as a serial Amazon purchaser. So that would be the first thing. The second thing I would say is the technology. Obviously, I don't think we could, go through a conversation without mentioning how, technology has just drastically advanced in the last 5 to 7 years. And just how readily accessible data and information are because of that. I think that's a benefit to the industry for sure. I also can see how it could be a hindrance as well. So,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So yeah, a lot of changes in it's interesting thinking about how COVID sort of accelerated some things that are already sort of percolating under the surface or starting, and then COVID
right.
just sort of fast forwarded a lot of that. Um,
Yes.
and then of course now with AI and technology just doing this hockey stick rapid
Yes.
pace of change, it's I imagine it's affecting supply chains even more than in the past.
Yes. Yeah, it's and to be honest, like I said, when I remember a case study that I had done and research within my program, and it was talking about leveraging AI and more visibility and technology. And it was like, yeah, we don't expect this for another 10 to 15 years. And it's like, it's only been 6 years. Now we're already way further advanced, I feel like, than what was predicted, 5, 6 years ago. So it really is interesting to see how things have shifted. But it's important, I think, for companies to understand that, you can't go from 0 to 100 overnight either. There has to be some sort of incremental steps taken. I think COVID did highlight the fact that our infrastructure, our technologies, the way that we've been doing things really did need a revamp. How a lot of companies didn't look at risk management. Now that's like a staple. How being adaptive to disruption, and how many disruptions are there nowadays, and how it's all interconnected. I don't really think that was highlighted until the pandemic, at least on a scale of business wide, global wide, that perspective. So,
Yeah. It was interesting to see how, the global supply chains as we knew it up until 2020 had been pretty stable, and it had taken
right,
decades to build that global supply chain, especially like in the US, so much of our supply chain got offshored and manufacturing got
right,
offshored, and it just became more of a complex global supply chain. And then when COVID hit, it sort of exposed the vulnerabilities and the risks.
right,
And so I don't know if, back to your point, I don't know if just in time and lean was the problem, or if it was the fact that we relied too much on, sole sourcing certain products to vendors that were in areas that were affected by, geopolitics or COVID or whatever. I don't know
right,
the answer to that, but it seems like it sort of exposed some of the vulnerabilities that were always there. It just, that supply chain was built for very stable times, it seems like.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
And I would also say too that I don't feel like disruptions, I don't want to say they weren't as prevalent, because I think they were. I just
Yeah.
don't think we had the access to the information, the data, until COVID kind of highlighted that for us, of how many disruptions there are. I also don't think we really fully grasped how interconnected all of the operations of supply chain are. It's not just one supply chain. It's both internal, external, on a macro scale. I really think the pandemic kind of highlighted the importance of understanding that interconnectivity among, every process within your organization, with your suppliers, with the suppliers of the suppliers, with your providers, with all of it, and just how lasting the impacts can be too.
Yeah.
Because it is a trickle down effect. I see it as kind of a systemic thing, right? Where you've got one risk that happens. Well, it's not isolated in most cases, especially on a scale of like the pandemic. It's not isolated to one area of, supply chain or one company. It trickles down into everything else. And when you think about it in that more, I guess, systems type thinking, then you really start to understand, oh, that's why we're now more cognizant of the disruptions that are happening, and being able to see those a little more, because we felt the impacts, as trickle down or as the direct receiver of the disruption. So it's been an interesting shift, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Now, a lot of what you're alluding to here is complexity and risk.
Yes.
when you think back to all the different supply chains you work with and have worked with in the past, do you have one in particular that's the most complex, or maybe one example of a really complex supply chain? Maybe, you don't necessarily need to mention names or confidential information, but how do you give us a kind of a case study or a use case of one of the more complex ones you've seen?
Yeah. So I actually, oh gosh, I worked, and I feel like I'll preface this with, I feel like a lot of startup environments tend to be kind of like this, to be honest. So it's not uncommon to see this. But I worked with a company where they were manufacturing in China, and they were obviously pulling those products into the US, distributing them into retail locations within the US. But the products were, I guess, make to order, so customized. And so a lot of times they would face last minute changes. They would face last minute, oh, we need to alter the size. We need to alter this. We need to alter the color. We don't like that. And so being able to shift and pivot to those things alone within manufacturing was very complex. Because the other thing too is that putting the products into retail did not care if you did not hit a deadline. You had to hit that deadline. You're going into a retail outlet. There's no wiggle room on when they need the stuff at their location. And so you are still expected, despite the changes, to still get your product at that date. So it's a lot of pivoting, a lot of quick transitioning, and then adjusting all of your plans accordingly to fit that. And so I would say that was probably the most complex one that I have seen. But it did produce a lot of opportunity. And I think for a lot of startups within that side of things, it does produce a lot of opportunity to identify, hey, can we do things like mass customization? Can we get a baseline of things and then, customize at the last minute? Are we able to utilize, domestic distribution or domestic being able to customize these products and then send them in? So that way you're cutting time out of your timeline to be able to facilitate changes at the last minute. So it brought about an idea of how can we add buffer into different things? How do we add buffer into our manufacturing? How do we add buffer into our transportation? Because that's the other thing too. Getting container space, getting, air space, if you have to air freight, those are all different things, especially with fluctuating rates. Maybe you didn't plan for when you scoped, the project or scoped producing these products. So I would say that was probably the most complex one that I've had to deal with.
It sounds super complex. I mean, the make to order aspect of it, the make to order manufacturing combined with the global offshoring and that sort of thing. I can see how that could become very complex very quickly.
Yes. Yeah. And putting out a lot of fires too, because, if you face a disruption at any point within that process and you've got a hard deadline, it's like you have to immediately jump in to fix it. And so, and like I said, I feel like that's pretty common within more startup realms, but it's looking at what are you currently doing? How can you at least mitigate a little bit of that disruption and plan ahead for some of those more things that are known to be happening? Like, for example, with one client, I always knew they were going to pop up at the last minute with a change. Okay. I then started to know I need to build a buffer here, or I need to come up with a different way of doing this more consistently, or I need to make sure that they're aware that if this change happens, we're going to have to add timeline, or we're going to have to add cost, or whatever the case may be. So you start to kind of learn some of those things that you can start to add into these executions, especially in the startup realm. But yeah, that was chaos all the time.
Yeah. Well, it also begs the question of, do you ever find, like in that case study and or just clients you work with in general, that there's a conflict between you talked about customer experience earlier and,
right.
and providing in this example, the make to order manufacturer, providing what the customer wants as fast as they can get it. There's the customer experience side of it. There's the efficiency and profitability side of it, which would suggest that you could stockpile inventory. That'd be another way to, you talked about that earlier. You could just stockpile inventory, and that's a way to give yourself some buffer, but that's not profitable.
Right.
That's not the most profitable way to do it. And then you've got supply chain optimization, which, you're trying to sort of balance this all out. Do you find that there's like competing priorities that you've got to navigate, or how do you navigate it in that case of that example you just gave?
Yeah. So there's always competing priorities, I feel like. I mean, within supply chain, there's never a silver bullet, right? Something is always going to take a hit if you want to do something else. It's all about how you balance that. So for example, and this is something I would face within that case study all the time of, yeah, we've got to extend manufacturing. Okay, well then I have to shorten transportation, which means increase the cost, because usually what, time is money, right? The faster the speed, the higher the cost. So then it would be, well, you can't do that. Okay, well then we can't shorten manufacture, or we can't extend manufacturing. What can we do instead? So there's always going to be competing priorities, I feel like. And it's not necessarily, I think it depends on the company of what their strategy and goals are, to know where you can, I don't want to say take a hit, but where you can take a hit on some things to achieve others. But I think companies who are looking at those competing priorities, it should never be a, hey, let's just say yes to everything and we'll figure it out later, because that's how you get in those scenarios of where you're bleeding cost, you're producing a product that may not be up to standard. You're also not doing it in an efficient way to where it's going to be sustainable long term, especially if things do grow or if they do take off. So it has to be well thought out of, you know, what can I sacrifice slightly to get more of a what the customer wants, or a better, I guess, consumer experience. And there will always be a little bit of a trade-off. It is a balance.
Yeah. And I suppose it's back to what you said or alluded to around the prioritization. You know, what are your priorities? I mean,
Right.
is it customer experience? Is it profitability and efficiency? What is your priority there? I'm here with Casey Jenkins from 828 Consulting, talking about process improvement in supply chains. I've got a lot more to cover, but first we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control. People oftentimes ask me how I built such a strong social media following on YouTube and LinkedIn and Facebook and other outlets. And the fact of the matter is it took me a long time to build a following through a lot of trial and error, making a lot of mistakes. Had I known that there were companies out there that could help me build my brand, I would have done that a long time ago. I didn't know that, but the good news is that there is today a consulting firm that will help you through building your own personal brand through some of their training programs. The company is called Roloff Consulting, and if you're familiar with Emma Roloff, she's someone that I've had on this podcast before, and she's well known in the digital transformation space as well as the sales space. And she's big on TikTok, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And she and her husband have started a training course and a training company that focuses on helping people build their personal brands and helping them to sell themselves digitally. So whether you're a salesperson that's trying to reach more customers, or you're an individual that's just trying to build your personal brand, that's something that they help with through their training programs. And they've offered listeners of this podcast a free 5-day LinkedIn challenge. And I encourage you to check it out. I've included a link below for this podcast. If you go to the podcast notes, you'll find a link that gets you free access to this 5-day challenge, where you'll get step-by-step guidance. You'll get real results. So you'll get some tangible results from the program. And you also get a special offer at the end of it. So it's exclusive to listeners of this podcast. Be sure to check out the link below if you want to work on building your personal brand, or if you're in sales and you're trying to reach more people. Whatever the case may be, check it out. It's free to listeners of this podcast. You can check it out via the link below.
Interested in working for a company that truly values your unique skills and experience? Here at Third Stage, we don't hire based on resumes alone. We look at the full candidate, experience, and willingness to provide excellent service for our clients. Within a technology independent and agnostic consulting firm, you have the opportunity to learn across industries with a diverse group of clients. Our consultants also have the opportunity to diversify their portfolio and learn across technology systems. If you're interested in joining a high-growth entrepreneurial organization, please reach out to us at work@thirdstage-consulting.com.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 178. This is Eric Kimberling. I'm here with Darian Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday at transformationgroundcontrol.com. The show is produced by Major Tom Productions and sponsored by Third Stage Consulting. So thank you for being here today. I'm in the middle of a conversation here. I've got Casey Jenkins on the show. We're talking about process improvement in supply chain management. Jason from the UK has a comment here, just building on what you said. Casey, law of bottleneck management, theory of constraints. Reminds me of, I think I have the book in my office right here. The Goal. Did you ever read The Goal by Eli Goldratt? I think his name is.
No, but I've heard of it.
It's really good.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
old school, but it's really good.
I will say that these days, the most of my reading are like textbooks. I know how like weird that sounds, but like I love reading through textbooks. So
Right, right. Well, you're the first person I think I've had on the show that has said that they love reading textbooks. But
it's
if you ever
weird.
want to change a pace, you might like this one, The Goal, because it's it's a fable, but it's it's building on academic concepts, but it's
Okay.
telling it more of a story format. So if you
Okay.
need like a lighter version of learning, the Goal by
Yeah.
Eli Goldrat's a really good one.
Okay.
And so one follow-up question that sort of builds on the question I just asked you about the most complex supply chain. Darian on LinkedIn asked, what's the most effective supply chain you've seen? Do you have an example of one that was just either before and or after you were involved and you helped them get to this future state? What were some of the traits of that most effective supply chain that you've seen?
So actually, I'm going to approach this from a consumer's perspective,
Okay.
because most of the companies I work with, there's a lot of issues within their operation. So while we can make a small improvement and it gets better, there tends to be more improvements that have to be made, and I think that comes from my continuous improvement mindset. I never see, a supply chain process as like, this is like the top tier gold standard. However, that's because I'm in the weeds, right? I'm supposed to be looking at it from a business perspective of where can we do things better. As a consumer, though, and I think it's important for us as business people to look at things from the consumer's perspective. As a consumer, let's just take a look at, Amazon, Walmart, and how we experience those supply chains. I mean, I think, for me, I hop on Amazon. And of course, I'm not the average consumer. I know a lot about supply chain. So of course I'm looking for these things. But, I hop on there and I'm going, okay, I can buy a product. It can be in my hands sometimes in the same day. Think about the efficiency of how that product has to move to be able to be in my hands if I order at 10 a.m. Eastern today and it be here by 7, 8 o'clock tonight, right?
Yeah.
It's incredible to stop and think the flow of data, the visibility within their systems, the visibility within their distribution facilities, their warehouses, the level of inventory management they have to maintain. Walmart's another one who's been working on their supply chain to get it to the level to compete with Amazon, and how they've shifted from brick and mortar to more e-commerce style. And when you look at it from that perspective of like a consumer, I see those things as like, wow, that's incredible, right? Of course, if I got into the business side of it, I'd probably be like, y'all have got gaps all over the place. But
Right.
looking at it from the consumer side, and I think it's important to do that sometimes, and not look at it from that business perspective, but think of it as consumers ourselves. You really do see the magnitude of how when products move and they can move that quickly, they can move that easily and be at your doorstep. It is pretty incredible to actually sit and think about. So
Yeah, all the things that need to go right and be well
right.
orchestrated to make
Yep.
that happen. And it's interesting too, because a lot of times when you think about supply chains, supply chains are so complex that it's easy
Yes.
to turn inward and like, let's
Yeah.
just focus on ourselves and all the stuff we need to do and all these moving parts we need to manage. But you keep coming back to this point of looking at it from the customer
Yes.
experience. You've mentioned it a few times now, customer experience, look at it from the customer angle. And I think if you do that, that sort of it shines a light on the things that are most important, getting back to that
Right.
prioritization piece of it.
Yep.
Very interesting. Here's a question. I'm nervous to ask you this question. I'll tell you, let me preface it by saying I just filmed a batch of YouTube videos yesterday and I covered this exact topic. And I just
Okay.
know already, I'm going to ask you this question. You're going to say something that's going to be like, I should have covered that in the video, but it's too late because I already filmed it. So you're going to make my next YouTube video obsolete before it even comes out, but I'm going to ask it anyway. And this is great because this is from John Belden, who is actually a guest on the show. He's been on the show a couple times. He's from Upper Edge. I'll give Upper Edge a free plug here. They're a software, or they consult to companies. They're doing software negotiations, among other things. But John from Upper Edge says, I'd love to know if there have been any visible impacts of Gen AI, where visible impacts were probable impacts and where it has been tested and perhaps not paid dividends. So just in general, are you seeing generative AI affect supply chain management? How's it affecting you and your client base?
Yes. So, it's so interesting. And this is something that I think technology as a whole, it kind of needs to be addressed. I've seen a lot of talks, and I'm not very involved with the whole, how do I say, like back end side of the AI type technology. Like I can understand from the surface of like what it's supposed to do, how it fits into a process, what it's supposed to be able to predict within a process,
How you use it, all that stuff.
yeah, how to use it. But from like the back end side, like the computer side, no, that's going way over my head. So, but I will say with technology in general, we cannot lose sight of the fact that it is a tool, right? We can't lose sight of the fact that you have to have your operations and your processes kind of set and in place and know what's going on in your organization to be able to leverage tools like that can truly add enhancement and make a positive impact. But if it's not leveraged the right way, then it's not going to pay the dividends. Because you have to kind of think of that in terms of a garbage in, garbage out, right? Like this goes back to the lean methodology mentality. Value and waste. If you've got waste flowing within your processes, if you've got erratic flows, if you've got problem areas or gaps or inefficiencies or things that aren't working as they should, if you just slap technology over that, expecting that it's going to produce a usable result, I wouldn't necessarily trust that, because if you put garbage in, you're probably going to get garbage out. And, and I think of it from, I'm very avid in fitness. And so for me, I can't be sitting here eating ice cream I would if I could. I can't be eating ice cream every day and then going into the gym and expecting that that's going to fuel me in the right way to get a desired output, right? The same concept can kind of be applied here. You can't have inputs in a process or bad data filling that process and expecting that technology or AI can take it and do something with it that's going to be effective. And in my experience, I can say that from even using AI myself, I think we all have used, Chat GPT to like help us brainstorm or whatever the case is. And I know if I plug in a prompt that isn't what I'm looking for, what is it going to do? It's going to produce an output, but it's probably not going to be the output I'm looking for. The same concept can apply within your supply chain processes as well. So I think with that, with that question, there are visible impacts of if you've got your processes in order and you know what's going on within your organization and you've leveraged the tool to support automating or using it in a manner that's going to actually benefit and take you in a forward progression to where you want to be, then sure, right? Obviously, you may have to make some small tweaks, but if you've not done that initial step of baselining and you're just going to slap technology over it, I don't think it's going to produce the dividends that you would hope it would. So
yeah. Where do you think, like, if you had to predict then, where do you think generative AI could add the most value? Assuming you've got a customer or client that has their ducks in a row as far as the processes are well defined, you've got good data, all that stuff. Are there certain like areas of low hanging fruit that you think could be ripe for generative AI?
Yes. I would say route optimization within transportation is one. And that's on a global scale too, being able to understand, hey, if we've got disruption, and this feeds into risk management, right? If we've got disruption here, how can we optimize the route to still get our product on time and at the lowest cost? And that's globally, domestically, maybe moving it in via like LTL versus truckload, things like that, splitting the shipments, whatever it is. I think it could be very useful within that. But from a general risk management perspective, of course, I look at everything from the project management, risk management perspective, right? I'm looking at it as, okay, everything is a risk. Everything is a disruption. Right. So, like not only within transportation, but also like inventory management, right? How do we better forecast? How do we narrow down that forecast to where we're not holding too much inventory, which becomes a risk, but we're also not, getting where we have stock outs, which is a risk in itself as well. So definitely within inventory management, definitely within the transportation side, I can see that type of technology being utilized very, very effectively. But then also in terms of like automating some of these back end tasks and accuracy within a lot of processes, I think is key throughout supply chain. So
yeah, even some of the little mundane things that are required to to manage a supply chain. You think about something like setting up a vendor master.
Yes.
The time it takes to do that. Could you use generative AI to do something like that, or creating an inventory record, or like an item master, that sort of thing. So
Right.
just some of the things that you've got to do to set up and get that data in place that you're talking about. You could be using generative AI to help create some of that data more consistently,
Right.
more efficiently too.
Yeah.
What about, here's a really interesting question that I hadn't thought of covering this topic, but I think it's interesting. This question is from Srinath on YouTube. Srinath asks, hi, I'd love to know what sort of visualization tools do industry professionals use to map out the operations process in business? So do you have certain visualization tools you use when you're mapping out a supply chain or the supply chain processes?
Yes. So I use Visio, but I know some people use Lucidchart. There's so many options out there. I know for me, I like Visio. It's just an easy way to be able to draw my maps and quickly do them. But there's other ways as well. You can just manually draw them, and so there's some technologies now where you can write on the screen and it produces it for you. But those are the two biggest ones that I would say that I've worked with and I like using.
Yeah. I'm here with Casey Jenkins from 828 Consulting, talking about process improvement in supply chains. I've got a lot more to cover, but first we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more on Transformation Ground Control. Hi, this is Eric Kimberling with Third Stage Consulting, and I want to invite you to join our annual tech agnostic conference called Digital Stratosphere. Digital Stratosphere is a conference that features some of the industry's brightest minds, greatest thinkers, and it's a great opportunity to network with peers, other industry people, other CIOs, other project team members that are going through digital transformations or ERP implementations. We've got a great lineup of speakers this year. It's a 3-day event, a lot of great entertainment, networking opportunities. I'll be there as one of the keynote speakers, along with some of my favorite speakers in the industry as well, both within Third Stage Consulting, but also outside the company as well. So I encourage you to check it out and learn more. You can go to stratosphere2024.com to learn more about the event. You can see the agenda, the way it's shaping up, and you can see some of the past testimonials of people that have attended. And the event is October 2nd through the 4th, 2024. It's going to be based in Denver, Colorado, downtown Denver, beautiful downtown Denver in the fall, which is a great time to visit Denver if you haven't been. Again, stratosphere2024.com. Check out the agenda. Check out our early bird pricing for passes. And the other beautiful thing is if you can't be here in person in Denver, which we hope you can, but if you can't, you can also join remotely as well. We have virtual passes available as well, so you're able to join from wherever in the world you might want to join from. So stratosphere2024.com, check it out, and I hope to see you there.
The last thing you want to have happen is for your digital transformation to end up in court. I've been doing this for 20 years and I have seen everything. My name is Marcus Harris. I'm a software and technology attorney focusing my practice on drafting and negotiating software-related contracts and litigating software disputes across the country. Feel free to reach out to us at taftlaw.com. We'd love to talk to you about the litigation process and what you can expect.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 178. This is Eric Kimberling. I'm here with Darian Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday at transformationgroundcontrol.com. The show is produced by Major Tom Productions and sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, so thank you for being here today. I'm in the middle of a conversation here. I've got Casey Jenkins on the show. We're talking about process improvement in supply chain management. Sarah Andre says, how can I build resilience in my international business supply chain? How to best reconfigure supply chains against disruption management. You did talk about this a little bit before, but I want to come back to it because I think it is a fascinating topic, and this is a great follow-up question here. But what are some of the ways or strategies that you've seen organizations build that resilience, that flexibility? How are you seeing them reconfigure their supply chains to deal with this risk and disruption that you've been talking about throughout this conversation?
Yeah, so I would say the first thing with building resilience, and I keep going back to this because I see things from a very process perspective. I see a business as a system. I see a supply chain as a system. And I think it's important to look at it from that perspective. So I'd say the first thing is understand that businesses and supply chains are a system, right? You've got one thing that happens, it's going to impact the output. So when you think of resilience, when you think of it on the scale of, end-to-end systems thinking, you start to then expect disruption. And I think that's the other thing that, we often are very reactionary to disruption, instead shifting the mindset. So some of it's just a mindset shift. And then when you start to look at it from, okay, how do I proactively identify where disruptions occur or where the risks are? It's then looking at within your procurement. Have you vetted your suppliers? Have you gone through with them to make sure their quality is up to standard? Within your manufacturing, are they producing products at the top tier, most efficient level? What type of equipment are they using? What type of machines are they using? Are they maintaining quality there? When you get into logistics, then you start to go, well, wait a second. Is that carrier able to service all of my lanes? Are they able to actually move that product for me? Do they have the capacity to be able to move this even in peak seasons? You start to look at your warehousing. Do they have the capacity to hold my products? What are the costs that they're holding them for? Are there areas to, cut those costs out, or maybe optimize that through leveraging a different type of partner? And you kind of start to think, once you shift your mindset into going, okay, where can I identify problems? How can I expect disruption? You start to then piece together very quickly, oh, here's the areas I need to start thinking of. And when you start at those small areas, then you start to build that resilience a little better. The other side of it is being able to be agile too. And I think there's a balance between trying to be planned and trying to be agile and trying to adapt. But again, if you take that mindset shift and seeing it as a system, looking at it from an end-to-end perspective, and then proactively trying to say, where can things go wrong? You start to then build that resilience and start to spot and combat those disruptions or risks.
Yeah, and back to your earlier thread and points up around the customer experience, if you can look at it from maybe pull out some use cases, like if most of us working in supply chain management have some sort of breakdowns or failures in our supply chain. So let's take that as a use case and figure out, how did that break? What happened there? How did it affect the customer? What should have happened? What could have happened if we could do it differently? And you sort of use that failure point as an opportunity to learn and say, okay, well, let's figure out how to provide a better customer experience with the supply chain.
Right.
Yeah. What emerging trends, we started to talk about this a little bit earlier, but what emerging trends or technologies are you most excited about, or do you think are the most promising in this world of supply chain management?
Yeah. So, it's so funny to me because I've heard a lot of talks, especially within the transportation side of visibility, right? Everyone wants to know where the products are at. And I think within transportation alone, if companies were able to actually leverage that visibility in a way that's going to be effective for the shipper, I think it could be useful. But I think a lot of companies are now starting to understand the concept of visibility from an end-to-end perspective and how that data can flow. So I'd say one of the more promising things is the interconnectivity of systems and how companies are trying to create that visibility from end to end. I mean, I'm talking consumer data all the way back to your manufacturer, and figuring out how can we make sure that there's a real-time visibility for all parties involved within the supply chain. So that's one. The other thing, obviously, AI, robotics. I mean, I've seen some cool stuff with how, robots are operating within, some of these DCs and facilities with picking and packing. And it's really incredible to see. But I go back to that point of, you have to make sure that you've got your, I won't say your house in order, but you got to make sure your processes are in order before leveraging those technologies. And I'll give an example. I worked with a company where they wanted to implement robots into their DC. And they had 27 systems talking behind the scenes to each other, flowing data. And I'm sitting there going, what? But you want to leverage a robot? Why haven't we thought about fixing that other problem first?
And then get to the robots later.
Right. So it's one of those things where it's like, yes, everyone wants to be able to leverage and use this new technology and the cool way of doing things, but it's also being cognizant of the fact that you have to take incremental steps. And that's okay, because any forward progress is still forward progress. So
yeah, great points. And I agree with that. I think there's there's this we're at this point, this interesting point in technology and just the way things are changing, where there's all this cool stuff out in the distance and stuff that's available right now. I mean, you can get any of this cool stuff like robotics and AI, all the stuff we've been talking about. You can get this stuff right now, but so many of us and so many organizations here listening are stuck further back. You know, we're still trying to figure out how to tie together 27 systems, or we're still trying to figure out how to clean up our data. We're still trying to figure out how to stop using spreadsheets. You know, so you think about things like that, and it can be overwhelming to say, well, how am I going to use generative AI if I'm still using spreadsheets over here? Well, okay, generative AI is still going to be there. It's going to keep changing. Let's get some incremental steps and wins now and sort of clean up some of this stuff behind the scenes. And then you can start thinking about robotics and AI, and whatever other trend that comes around that we don't even know about yet.
Well, and that's the thing too, is there's always something new and innovative coming out as well. And so, you know, that's why I always challenge my clients and customers to make sure that when they invest in this type of technology, or, you know, the things that they're looking at doing, that it comes from a more long range perspective, right? Because this stuff is evolving very quickly. And when you invest that amount of time, the amount of resources and the money into implementing these new systems or tools, you want to make sure that they are going to be able to be scalable. They're going to be able to last for the long haul and be able to evolve, and then also integrate with some of those new ways of doing things as well when they come about. So it's something where, you know, I try to challenge, you know, especially small businesses. You can't be looking and comparing yourselves to the multi-billion-dollar organizations who can try out various technologies. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, they can adjust it, right? They've got the money to be able to do some of those things. Smaller companies do not. And so you want to make sure that you're comparing yourself with yourself, you know, the level that you're at and what's industry standard for where you're at, and making sure that what you're investing into is going to be valuable for you for now, but also for the long term as well. You want to make sure you get that return on the investment.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, there's some technology that might be too high cost, too high risk without enough of a justifiable ROI right now. And that's okay. You don't, you know, just because everyone else is using Gen AI or whatever the tool is, doesn't mean you need to. I mean, you might have bigger fish to fry, or, you know, lower hanging fruit to try and address first. And you got to define a strategy that fits that, I suppose.
Right.
What about careers? Let's talk about careers for a second. Anytime I talk about supply chain management or put a video out about supply chain management, I get a ton of questions around careers. Like, I want to pivot into supply chain management, or I'm a supply chain manager. I'd like to get into supply chain consulting or something, like, you know, just a lot of questions around careers. But what sort of advice would you give to people that are either aspiring professionals in the supply chain space, or they're just trying to further their careers in the space? What sort of general advice would you have?
Yeah. So, you know, it's interesting because I wish I had someone when I was early on in my career kind of guiding me, you know, and now I see the value of asking these types of questions and having people contribute this type of knowledge, because I wish I would have known some of this stuff. So I will say that before we go into this. But one of the things is always be learning, whether that's like truly invest in yourself to learn and to know these things and to gather tools and knowledges that are going to set you apart in the industry. And I don't mean go get, you know, all these degrees like I have. That's just a me thing. I like learning in that way. But, you know, learn from networking and other industry professionals, learn from going to industry events, learn from workshops or podcasts like this, learn from seminars, special events, short courses. There's so many certifications you can get now that weren't available, you know, 10 years ago, related to technology, related to different models and frameworks within supply chain, and going to attack those things just to kind of help give you another set of skills and tools that you can leverage within your role. But then I would also say challenge yourself to get as much experience within the industry from an end-to-end perspective. And I don't mean job hop. That's not what I'm saying. But, you know, try to get experience in procurement, in distribution, in manufacturing, in logistics, and get that end-to-end perspective. Because one of the biggest things that I've seen within organizations is there is lacking that knowledge of end-to-end and how it all fits together. And so going to try to understand it from that perspective is going to give you a leg up within a lot of these organizations, because you start to think of things on a more holistic scale than if it's just within a functional area. You're starting to broaden those siloed barriers, I guess, and making it more organizational wide, not just department wide. So that would be the biggest thing. Networking, that's always a good one. It's always great to meet other professionals in the industry, but always be learning and try to just expand your knowledge and scope as much as you can.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, you talk about silos and, you want to think end to end. I think you're sort of striking at the heart of what's wrong with a lot of supply chains, or where the inefficiencies, breakdowns are. It's because we're operating in silos. The customer service group isn't linking up or isn't integrated with the logistics group, but, we're all kind of operating our own little silos and optimizing our little silos, but it's hard for a lot of people to think about, well, how does this all tie together? How does it all optimize across there? I'll throw out one other shameless plug, since we're talking about education. And actually, Casey, I am going to invite you to this to speak at it. So not to put you on the spot, but I am going to extend an invitation for you to speak at this event. But this is an event called Digital Stratosphere we do every year. It's going to be in October in Denver, downtown Denver, Colorado. We do tons of different speakers and sessions on digital transformation. We're going to cover supply chain management. We cover process improvement, change management, all that sort of stuff. We're doing your early bird pricing. I put a QR code up on the screen. If you're watching this on the video version, just scan the QR code. I'll leave it up here for a few minutes. You can learn more about the event, see the agenda, how it's shaping up. You can also see the pricing options and whatnot. But there's an early bird discount. You get 20% off. If you want to attend, I'll be there. Hopefully Casey will be there. I haven't asked her yet, but we'll see if she's going to be there. And then, I don't know what I'm doing that day, but sure. But and there's so far we've got about a dozen speakers lined up, but we'll have a couple dozen by the time all is said and done. A lot of different topics, a lot of diverse opinions. So scan the QR code if you want to learn more about it and see kind of the agendas from last year and whatnot. But I'll leave that out for a second. So that's another educational opportunity. And hopefully that helps, that Casey's feedback there gives you some advice on how to navigate your career, because I know a lot of people are really interested in this field.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? What do you think the prospects are for careers in supply chain management? Do you see it as a growing space? Is there going to be more demand for people that know the stuff? Are there certain skills that are going to be in more demand? What are your thoughts?
Yes. So, it's funny you asked that. So I've been doing a lot of work within the education space, working with some universities. And one of the things that, everyone is trying to figure out are what are the skills needed in supply chain as it's changing so rapidly. I'd say as of right now, analytics, technology, those are key things that a lot of schools are teaching and trying to provide as skills for students, coming out of, their programs and getting into the workforce. But I would also say I go back to understanding that end-to-end and systems thinking. That's another key skill. The other thing is, I don't want to say, I would say cross-disciplinary. I don't want to say like one discipline's better than the other, but really understanding and integrating, like project management and supply chain, or understanding how agile within project management can fit into supply chain. I know I'm also working on my PMP, so getting some of those certifications more on the project management side. Those are very valuable skills right now because, like I said before at the start of this, a lot of companies are executing initiatives. So between like the tech and the data side of the skill set, but also the project management side, which comes with that leadership component and, how to get a team together and that team building component. So I think those are all important skills as supply chain continues to evolve.
Yeah. So just to sort of continue thinking in the future here, are there certain projects or initiatives that you're working on that you're particularly excited about that you're able to share with the audience here today?
So actually, yes, there is one that I'm doing some advisory work on, tech company, and it's a visibility tool. It's fantastic. And to be able to add true end-to-end visibility, it's going to be really cool. I can't really share too much about it, but it's going to be really cool. The other thing that I've been working on, like I said, I've been working with universities. I'm doing some course development with helping getting programs up and going at schools. But then also I'm going to be doing some guest short courses with a university. I don't think I'm allowed to announce who it is yet. I'll let them do the honors later. But short courses starting in August with the university within, supply chain, logistics, transportation. And I'm super excited about that. I'm passionate about the educational side and being able to teach and educate. And so I'm excited about those two projects.
Oh, cool. And you should add Stratosphere as a third, because if you like to teach, you'll love coming to Stratosphere too. You're the first person I put on the spot and said I'm going to invite you to the conference live in front of an audience. So
that's awesome.
Thanks for being a sport about that. And actually, I've got a couple bonus questions. I was sort of winding down, but I have to come back to this question because it's a really good one.
Okay.
And this is from Twitch. Actually, we don't get a lot of questions from Twitch, but the question here is from the handle name Ringer. How do emerging technologies like AI, Internet of Things, and blockchain contribute to enhancing predictive analytics and operational efficiency in modern supply chain management? That's a big question, but what are your thoughts there?
I would say from a general perspective, the emerging technologies are providing the data and the framework to be able to then predict from it, if that makes sense, at least in my experience. I think it's important, though, that we realize how these technologies work together. It does rely on a quality data set and where that data is coming from. But I would say that's they set the framework for then how to predict and iterate and be able to learn from that. So,
yeah, very cool. So, closing advice for a team member or an organization that's sort of taken all this information in, learned a lot of stuff, hopefully, from you. Now, what do I do? How do I get started? Like, what are some first steps or next steps that you typically see that works, regardless of where you are in your maturity of your supply chain and what your specific problems are? Like, what are some tangible next steps to get started?
Yeah, I would say if you know what your problems are, root cause analysis, make sure that you really know what your problems are, because sometimes what is perceived as a problem is actually a surface level manifestation of something deeper. So make sure that you're doing root cause analysis on what your perceived problems are. And then from there, you're able to identify, oh, that's an issue. How do we solve it? Right. If you don't really know what your problems are, a good first step is mapping out your processes in your supply chain. You'll identify pretty quickly where there's some gaps and what your problems could be. Or it's, collaborating with other folks within the industry to pick their brains. You can pull in an outside resource to help with that. But I would say for the most part, a lot of companies have the capabilities themselves before having to go that route to really see, hey, if we just map out this process or document this down or look at it from what's happening in it, we're going to see pretty quick, wait a second, that doesn't line up, right? And those are easy ways that you can actually get started with process improvement or identifying where you might have some problem areas.
Yeah, that's a great starting point, regardless of where you are in the journey and where your specific pain points are. If you start there, I mean, that usually opens up sort of some clarity on where you go from there. How do people learn more about you? How do we connect with you? How do we follow you? How do we learn more?
Yes. So you can find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way. I'm usually pretty active on there. And you can reach out to me that way or via my website, which is 828consultingllc.com. And there's a contact me form through there as well. Either way, though, probably LinkedIn's the fastest and easiest. Everyone's on LinkedIn. So
yeah, exactly. All right. Thanks again, Casey. Great stuff. Really appreciate your being here today and look forward to potentially seeing you at our Digital Stratosphere conference as well, coming up in October of this year in downtown Denver, Colorado. And again, if you, the audience, are interested in learning more about that, if you would like to attend in person or if you'd like to attend remotely, we're doing virtual passes as well. If you register soon, you'll get a early bird discount. So be sure to go to stratosphere2024.com to learn more about that conference that we'll be hosting here in just a few months. Again, go to stratosphere2024.com. And it sounds likely that you'll see not only myself there, Darian there, but also Casey is likely to be there as well as a speaker. So Be sure to check it out. We're going to debrief on some of the stuff that Casey and I talked about and get into our next topic here in just a moment after a quick break. We're going to go behind the scenes and take you behind the scenes at a recent tech conference where we talk about AI and other trends in the ERP software space. But first, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
If you are involved in any sort of digital transformation or business change initiative, you will want to download the Digital Transformation Report. With its comprehensive overview of business and technology trends and best practices, this report is a must-have guide for any transformation project or executive team. Download this free report by visiting Third Stage Consulting at thirdstage-consulting.com. You can also visit our website to learn more about us or download independent reports, videos, and other best practices. Again, visit thirdstage-consulting.com today to learn how you can take your transformation to the third stage of success.
Are you looking for ways to promote your product or service to enterprise technology decision makers and influencers throughout the world, like the ones who listen to this podcast? Major Tom Productions creates media, events, and influencer marketing for B2B technology providers. Our productions are exciting, educational, disruptive, and effective. Most importantly, they create results. Our content is unlike any other in this industry, engaging, influential, and trusted by technology buyers and influencers throughout the world. Each month, our productions reach hundreds of thousands of targeted buyers and decision makers who trust and engage with our honest and tech-agnostic content. With long-tail viral results and engagement with our content, Major Tom Productions provides a way to reach your target market and create awareness, calls to action, and a connection with potential customers. So collaborate with us today. Learn how we can feature your product or service on podcasts such as Transformation Ground Control, Journey to S/4HANA, and Journey to Dynamics 365. We can also feature your brand on our YouTube channel called Digital Transformation with Eric Kimberling, which boasts over 100,000 subscribers and over 2 million video views per year. You can also participate in our in-person events, including our Digital Stratosphere Conference. Contact us today to learn more. We can tailor a marketing campaign that works for you. We look forward to helping more people learn more about and become engaged with your brand.
These things take time. Mom and dad, they have a good life. But what am I gonna do with mine?
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 178. My name's Eric Kimberling here at Darian Chwialkowski, and Darian, we just had Casey on the show talking about supply chain management, which we haven't talked about in a ton of detail here in recent episodes. So it's good to kind of revisit that topic that we have talked about in the past. What were some of your thoughts and follow-up questions and takeaways from the conversation?
Yeah, first of all, she has super high energy, like you said. I thought she was a super fun guest. I also think that she provided a lot of great insight, especially from her experiences that she's had with supply chain specifically, and all the different processes that companies really should follow for supply chain. But I kind of want to throw some of the questions back at you that you threw at her about her experiences. So the first one is, what is the most complex supply chain that you have ever worked with, Eric?
That's a great question. I wasn't ready for it. Even though I asked it of her, I wasn't expecting you to ask me. I'd say, I don't know that it's the most complex, but I will say it was at the time in my career, it was the most complex. So I learned a lot about supply chains by working with this company, and this company is called Lucent Technologies, and they're no longer around. They've been acquired, and I can't remember who acquired them, but they used to manufacture back in the late 90s when I first started in consulting, which is why it's so memorable, is they manufactured the big physical racks of telecommunication gear and networking technology. So they'd create these big racks that had different pieces and components that were highly customized, highly complex, very expensive. And they'd sell these big components to telecommunications providers like AT&T and Verizon and some of those big global players in the telecommunications space. And the reason that the supply chain was so complex is because the product itself was complex. They had very complex serialized hierarchies that were made to order, that were highly specialized and customized to different customers. So it started with a customer needs of these high end pieces of hardware, but then you had to figure out how to configure the technology to all fit together, all these different components within a complex technical product. And then you had to figure out how to source and manufacture all this stuff leading up to it. So you look at that and we talk actually, in the conversation with Casey, I mentioned this in passing. I said, the first process improvement initiative I did was on the returns process. And it was actually at this client, this Lucent Technologies. And just the returns process was super complicated because it was like a customer would have a problem, they'd say, and they'd return the big rack. But then there was serialized components. So you had to make sure that all those serial numbers matched the order of how it was originally sold. And oftentimes, customers would swap out components, and then you couldn't accept the return. You'd have to reject it and send it back to them to have them send it back with the original way it was built. So it was a highly complex supply chain that largely because it was make to order, engineer to order, and largely because it was just a very complex product that involved a hierarchy of serialized components. So you just think about all that and the global manufacturing and distribution that went along with that. It started with a complex product that sort of trickled across the entire supply chain of a very complex supply chain. So that's probably the one that I've seen more complex one since then. But at that time, that was just sort of a drinking from the fire hose way to learn about supply chains, which was a great learning experience for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure in the moment it was a bit overwhelming, but now you probably are grateful for that experience, like you said. What is the most effective supply chain that you have ever seen?
Well, I have to go to, it's not one that I can take credit for helping build, but although Amazon is a client of ours in the past, it's the robotics division of Amazon. So we have done consulting work with Amazon in the past, but I have to say Amazon. I mean, you look at Amazon and how streamlined their operations are and just the massive scale that they've achieved with their supply chain. It's super cool to watch, not just as a consumer, but just watching how they build out their scale. They go from, being a book distributor online to, not only moving well outside of books to where you can buy basically anything you want on Amazon. But then, now they've built out their distribution centers and all the real innovative way of last mile logistics of getting products from the warehouse or distribution center to the customers very quickly. I remember it's probably 5 or 10 years ago, Amazon used to lease out the mail trucks for the U.S. Postal Service on Sundays. They would lease out the mail trucks so they could be doing deliveries on Sundays. And that was before they started creating their own fleet. So now they've got their own branded fleet of Amazon, vans and trucks all over you see them all over any metropolitan area in the U.S. you go to. So it's just been fascinating to watch. So I'd say Amazon is the one that I sort of view as the gold standard. It used to be Walmart. 20 years ago, I probably would have told you it was Walmart because they're very innovative at supply chain management too. But Amazon has just taken that to a whole nother level.
Yeah, for sure. I think that seeing Amazon, I personally like it from the consumer side. Like you can order
sure you do.
there the next day.
Right.
But I think all of that is a really good example of what consumers now almost expect too from companies. So if you have consumers that have a really high expectation, how can you meet it? And I think you can try. Obviously, you can't replicate Amazon, but you can try and be more efficient, similar to Amazon.
Yeah. You may not, like you said, you may not achieve that scale, but you just have to strive to get as close as you can with who you are and how big of an organization you are. Just because, like you said, you as a consumer are used to Amazon. You and I, we both live in Denver. Our office is down on the south side of Denver, really close to an Amazon distribution center. So if you or I, this morning, we're filming this in the morning right now. If we were to order something right now, there's a lot of stuff, just random products we could have here, within just a few hours, which is pretty crazy to think about. In 10 years ago, that just wasn't even really an option, but now it is. So then you switch gears and look at businesses and how they engage with their technology providers and their partners, and they're humans that also use Amazon, presumably, and they are used to that level of customer experience. So now they're not going to turn off that expectation now just because they're at work. They're going to go to work and think, well, if I can get, a tube of toothpaste show up in just a couple hours, my doorstep at home. Why can't I get this product from this supplier at least within 30 days or, whatever the number is? So, that's the sort of expectation setting that Amazon has done to really raise the bar. So we've all got to strive to be Amazon, even though most of us are probably never going to achieve that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this kind of just came to mind. It's switching gears a little bit too, but there's definitely technologies out there that if the product is in your store and maybe you can't match Amazon's level of supply chain, but you could work with partners like DoorDash or Uber Eats or all those kinds of things where somebody can go and do the shopping for you and it can be delivered in the next hour. So for maybe those companies that aren't able to achieve, that in an hour we can get you a product, they can partner with somebody like Amazon, or not Amazon, like DoorDash or Uber, and that product can still be delivered to the customer if it's in stock in person.
Yeah, that's actually a really good observation. I mean, you think about, instead of trying to build it all yourself, how can you partner with other firms and providers that could help you round out your supply chain? And, I think a lot of supply chains already do that at some level. They've got third-party logistics providers and third-party freight providers and freight forwarders and stuff like that they work with. But what you're saying takes it to a whole nother level of collaboration and building partnerships and relationships that could help provide a better customer experience.
For sure. I know that's one feature I like to use when I can't go out. So I always get upset when a company isn't on it. I'm like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
So.
I think, Amazon, DoorDash, Instacart, a lot of these delivery services, and there's others throughout the world too. We're sort of talking about some of the US centric ones, but they exist all over the place. It's just cool being able to go to when I was in Europe a few weeks ago visiting our European office and our team there, it was just cool to know that I use the same app. I'm going to Uber Eats and I can order, fish and chips or whatever from whatever local provider I wanted. And it's cool. I mean, it's a really a cool experience. So we all have to strive to be that to others.
Yeah, for sure. But overall, I thought Casey did a great job today. I thought she provided such great insights for our audience, and I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Yeah. Hopefully, I know I enjoyed it. Hopefully the audience did as well, and would love to have her back on. And again, she'll be at Digital Stratosphere in October of 2024 in Denver, Colorado. Go to stratosphere2024.com to see the full speaker lineup as it's shaping up now. We're continuing to add to the speaker lineup because in this episode, we've added another speaker just by having this episode. But be sure to check that out. You can get early bird discounting too. And again, if you can't be here in person in Denver, you can also buy a virtual pass and join us from wherever in the world you want. And you also get access to the recordings after the fact too. So we're going to shift gears. We're actually going to take you, the audience, behind the scenes at a tech conference, which was actually a really cool project to do. It was cool to film this. It's the first time I'd done this exact format where I go behind the scenes, I get filmed, and I'm asking questions of people at the conference about some of the biggest trends they're seeing and they're most excited about, in particular AI. So we're going to play you that video here in just a moment and chat about it here a little bit more. But first, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
Could you whisper in my ear?
Before we dive too far into today's content, I want to share a little bit of information about Third Stage Consulting and who we are. Third Stage Consulting Group is an independent, technology agnostic provider of consulting services to help clients through their digital transformations. We help with digital strategy and software selection, as well as implementation planning. And during implementation, we provide services related to program management, organizational change, business process improvement, as well as enterprise architecture. These are just some of the services we provide. We have offices in North America as well as Europe and Asia Pacific. So if you'd like to learn more, I encourage you to check out our resource center, which includes a number of resources that will help you through your digital transformation. And you can access that for free using the QR code here or the links below. You can also reach out to me directly if you'd like to discuss your digital transformation and brainstorm ideas on how to improve where you're headed on your journey. Now let's jump back into today's content. I recently published my first book. It's called The Final Countdown, Strategies to Reach the Third Stage of Digital Transformation. And I wrote this book because I really wanted to find a concise way to share some of my knowledge around digital strategy and how to get started on a digital transformation journey. So in this book, I cover 3 different sections. I cover the people, process, and technology aspects of transformation, with the idea that it's meant to be a starting point, a launching pad for organizations and team members that are going through digital transformations. So I encourage you to buy this book. You can get it electronically, you can get it paperback, or you can get it in hard copy, as I'm holding here in front of you. You can get it by going to thefinalcountdown.com. You can also search for it on Amazon if you shop at Amazon. Otherwise, just go to thefinalcountdown.com. Love to hear your feedback on this book as well. So I hope you check it out and hope you enjoy.
Yes, I'll do anything you ever dreamed to be complete. Yes, I'm nothing that far.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode 178. My name is Eric Kimberly, here at Darian Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday at transformationgroundcontrol.com. And we're going to take you behind the scenes and play you a clip of a YouTube video that we recently published of me behind the scenes at a technology conference asking people about AI and other trends in the ERP software space. This particular conference I'm at here in this video was at the Ep178 Insights Conference, which was in Nashville, Tennessee earlier here this year here in the U.S. And had a chance to chat with a bunch of customers and technology providers within the Ep178 space about their thoughts on AI and other trends. So let's roll the clip and then we'll come back and talk about it.
One of the best ways to learn about trends in the ERP software industry is to attend a vendor conference. And this year I decided to attend several vendor conferences, and I'm at one right now in Nashville, Tennessee. And I'm here to learn about what people here are most excited about, what trends they're most excited about in the ERP space. My name is Eric Kimberly. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world reach the third stage of digital transformation success. And I'm here at the Ep178 Insights Conference, which is a software vendor in the ERP space. And not only am I here to learn about Ep178, but I'm also here to learn about what trends people are most excited about in the ERP industry. So what exactly are people excited about, and what are they learning so far in this conference? That's what we'll talk about here in the rest of this video. So in the world of enterprise technology, business technology,
Yes.
what trend or trends are you most excited about right now?
AI.
Definitely the AI trend.
You know what? Actually, I am excited about AI.
Well, if I didn't say AI, I'd be the lone man out, right? If I didn't say AI.
I'm sure everyone's mentioning it, but AI.
What's up with the new AI, how they're protecting things, what they can offer to the customers, how most likely it's going to be implemented, is it going to be easy, is it going to be worrying?
It's that talking point, it's that, really coming to fruition now of knowing what it can do to help.
Yeah.
So I think the customers, they're coming to us about it now and starting to ask, how is it being used within your software? How can we best use it? So there's a lot of interest in it and wanting to know how it can be used in a business versus just what people hear on the air about it.
Are you seeing or actually using AI in specific areas of your business yet? Are you in the early planning stages? Where are you at in the AI?
We are in the early planning stages. It's something that our company is looking at right now to bring us into the future, a little competitive advantage over our other industries that are out there.
We are an AI-driven sales acceleration platform.
Okay.
So really it's exciting for us as a company to have an opportunity to implement the things that we have built out and to help folks sell. They're just talking about how they can help their customers grow, how they can make sure that their customers get their needs met. So I'm really excited about how AI and ERP are coming together.
I want to see more discussion about security from a what do we do now standpoint versus I've got a tool that'll stop a hacker, a blocker, a bad actor. They are going to do bad things. Let's put some things into place about what that happens.
I think more of understanding how it can help them run their business better. I think they're looking for new technology and what is out there to do what they're doing now and do it better.
Yeah, absolutely. Trend or trends are you most excited about, looking forward to?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. One is I think we're starting to see a lot, like a move to flexibility within the ERP space. A lot of innovation is occurring in the ERP space, and it's happening at a much faster motion than we've seen before, right? So the classic use case right now is AI.
Right.
And what does that mean? Is it just a buzzword? Is it really, can I bring real value to our clients using AI? And I think we can. And so we've been able to take that AI piece and ground it in the unique company data of our clients, or in our case, us.
Right.
So it knows who we are, what we do, it understands our language, and it can tell us, and we find we get a much richer experience when we ask it questions about our business.
The usability factor that has come up, not just ease of use within screens, but just the interfaces, the technologies, the value add of AI, and as customers start to consume it, the promise of cloud made it easy to get in. I believe we're now at a next level of usability that is making it more practical for their teams to digest as well.
Right. Yeah, that's great.
Our customers are really wanting specialists. So although we focus in manufacturing, that's super critical for our customers, but having a deeper expertise, taking it to that next level, we have a specific focus around aerospace and defense and servicing the defense industrial base. We've written some code, we've got lots of training, education, and most importantly, the ability to really help our customers understand what it means to be compliant in the defense industrial base.
Practical use cases, things that maybe aren't the sexiest AI thing you can think of, but things that are going to deliver real value. So let me give you an example. I'm sure you're seeing this too. You know, creating an item record is probably one of the least sexy things you can do in a system, but it takes a monumental amount of time, and you think about using generative AI to generate descriptions, to generate long descriptions, web descriptions, actual value producing stuff.
Yeah, that's great. So that's what some of the experts have to say, but I'm curious to hear from you. What trends are you most excited about in the ERP space? And if you're going to conferences this year or anytime soon, what are you most excited about? I'd love to hear your feedback. Please drop those in the comments below. And of course, if you'd like to learn more about ERP systems in the market and some of the trends and best practices and top 10 software rankings and other independent tech agnostic advice, be sure to download our 2024 Digital Transformation Report. It's a free report we publish each year that covers a lot of the different things you're going to need to know to be successful in your digital transformation. You can download that by scanning the QR code right here in front of you or go to the links below. So if you found this information useful, and hope you have a great day.
So that's behind the scenes of me at the Epicor Insights Conference. It's always fun to hear and get other people's takes, kind of their quick hot takes on where they see AI and the technology trends moving in general. What were some of your thoughts and observations from that? I know you were there. You talked to a lot of these same people, and you saw me filming these people behind the scenes. But what were some of your thoughts after seeing the finished product there, Darian?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the finished product was really cool. We obviously saw a lot or heard a lot of people say they were excited about AI, but I thought it was good that we made them get into the specifics about why or what in AI are you actually excited about, because it's such a broad topic. And of course, everybody's excited about it, but what actually makes you excited about AI? And I thought it was really cool to see everybody's different kind of perspectives on that. But overall, I just have a couple questions maybe to expand on that video for you, for our audience here. How do you think these industry conferences can help businesses stay ahead of emerging trends in ERP technology? I know we heard a lot of AI answers, but how does businesses attending conferences like this help them stay relevant and ahead for what's going on?
Yeah, well, I mean, they're great learning experiences because you think about it, you're getting the vendors who put on these conferences, assuming you're talking about a software vendor conference, you know, Epicor, SAP, Oracle, Infor, all these big ERP software providers put on their own conferences. And they use these conferences as a way to educate, you know, as far as what's going to make their customers more successful, but also they're sort of on the bleeding edge of sharing at these conferences what they're doing with their products and how the product is changing and evolving. So it's a great way to learn a lot about stuff that's not even released yet, not even available to the market. You get to learn about it and see it in many cases firsthand before it's even released. So it's a great way to stay on the cutting edge in that way. But you know, the other part of the value of these conferences, I'd argue it might even be more important than the formal education you get at the conferences, is just talking to other peers and like being around other people that are going through the same thing as you. And it's a great way, you know, when for example, we've talked about in this episode, our Digital Stratosphere Conference, which is not a software vendor conference. It's an independent tech agnostic conference meant for, you know, all different people that are going through all different types of technology initiatives. But when we do these events, we hear all the time about how great it is for CIOs to talk to other CIOs or project team members to talk to other project team members, partially so that you realize you're not crazy and you're not alone. If it's almost like therapy in some ways, therapeutic to be able to say, oh, it's not just me. I'm not crazy. Our company's not crazy, or maybe we are, and we're all just crazy, but whatever. I feel better now knowing that I'm not the only crazy person out there that's going through these challenges. And so you start to commiserate a bit, and then you learn like, okay, we're learning about all this bleeding edge technology out on the horizon. We're way back here, stuck in the 80s or 90s with their old technologies or whatever it is. We're not alone. Now we can sort of work together and learn, how to move forward. So I think those are the two biggest values I see.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. And I want to know, I don't think you said what your favorite emerging trend was in the space. So can you tell the audience what yours is?
I don't have any actual opinions. I just like to ask people theirs. Just kidding. It's definitely AI. I don't even know I'm trying to think of something that might be a distant second place trend. And the reason I say I can't even think of a distant second place trend is because the other stuff that I am and was excited about before the AI movement is being further enabled by AI. So I think about things like predictive analytics, I think is super cool. Business intelligence is super cool. But AI is almost taking that to a whole nother level now and not making predictive analytics or business intelligence obsolete necessarily, but it's sort of just bringing it to a whole nother level. One, I guess if I had to pick an area that I think is a hot emerging trend, even though it's been around forever, but it's finally getting the attention and the spotlight it deserves, and that's data management. Now with AI, it's sort of the secondary result of that is now organizations are forced to figure out, well, we can't use AI effectively at all unless we have got good data. And we need to not only clean up our data, but have good data governance in place and that sort of thing. So I think AI is really shining a spotlight on that. So I think that's another really important trend.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's lots of fun different areas of AI that people can choose and look at. I know for me, obviously, I'm on the marketing side of things, so I love seeing how it develops on the content side and the email and blog side and how much better AI is getting over the years. So that's something that I'm definitely excited about. Not that anybody asked, but
I know I was just about to. I was going to turn the tables and make the joke be on you, but you preempted that by answering it. So nice move. Way to preempt my strike, my secret strike I was going to plan there.
yeah,
So
just as one step ahead.
yeah, but it is cool. Like you mentioned marketing, AI, it just sort of magnifies or underscores the fact that AI it's going to change every nook and cranny of business in general. You're talking about AI, we were talking about supply chain management, manufacturing, finance. Finance is another one where I feel like AI could really change finance and accounting. So lots of different areas are going to be affected by it. It's just a matter of how quickly and in what ways.
Yeah, for sure. Super exciting stuff though.
Yeah, that was good stuff. Well, thanks for another great episode. Thanks to the audience for all the great questions. Thank you to you, Darian, as well as Casey for being here today. And of course, thank you to all those people that were behind the scenes with me at the conference video that we played for you. I think there's about a dozen people I talked to there, so it was great to have them there too. You can find episode 179 coming up next week. You'll find it Wednesday of next week at transformationgroundcontrol.com. You can listen to all the past episodes at transformationgroundcontrol.com as well. Hope you have a great week, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week on Transformation Ground Control. Take care.